even if it was never said out loud. Someone else is doing better than you. For some children, this wasn't an occasional comment. It was the atmosphere. They didn't grow up feeling ignored. They grew up feeling evaluated. Their effort was compared. Their personality was compared. Their progress was compared. And when childhood ends, that measuring doesn't disappear. It simply moves inside. The child who is constantly compared becomes an adult who never fully rests. Not because they don't want peace, but because peace feels unfamiliar. Comparison taught them something early. Stillness is dangerous. In friendships, this shows up quietly. They become dependable, emotionally available, always present. They listen deeply and give more than they take. But underneath that generosity is an old question that never stopped echoing. If I stop being useful, will I still belong? They are often admired for being strong, but strength without safety becomes loneliness. They may struggle to believe they are loved simply for who they are. Affection feels conditional, even when it isn't. They redmining into silence and scan for signs of replacement. This isn't because their partner is untrustworthy, but because their nervous system learned that connection can be revoked without warning. Love doesn't feel unsafe. Loss does. So the heart stays alert. At work, the pattern intensifies. They work hard, but not always from passion. Often, it's from fear. Because relief is just the absence of threat, not the presence of fulfillment. Rest feels uncomfortable because comparison never rests. Someone else is always moving forward, at least in the imagination. This creates a very specific exhaustion. Not physical. Existential. The exhaustion of constantly proving something that was never clearly defined. Ironically, many people who grew up compared are highly capable. They are emotionally intelligent, adaptable, and perceptive. Decision-making becomes heavy. Every choice feels like a test. What if this isn't impressive enough? What if someone else chooses better? What if this choice lowers my value? Because when your worth is tied to the outcome, every decision feels like Judgment Day. Failure becomes complicated. Some fear it deeply, while others expect it. Some unconsciously sabotage success right before it arrives. Not because they want to fail, but because success brings visibility. Visibility feels dangerous to someone who learned early that being seen meant being evaluated. Failing early feels safer than being judged later. This isn't self-destruction. It's outdated self-protection. Another quiet consequence of constant comparison is the loss of internal motivation. When a child grows up focused on outperforming others, they lose touch with what they genuinely want. They become skilled at achieving but disconnected from desire. As they may succeed in paths they never chose. They may look accomplished and still feel empty. Because fulfillment doesn't come from performance. It comes from alignment. And alignment requires self-connection, the very thing comparison disrupts. Healing doesn't begin with confidence. It begins with curiosity. Curiosity about questions that were never safe to ask before. What do I actually like? What feels meaningful to me? What matters when no one is watching? At first, this feels uncomfortable. Because there's no scoreboard, no feedback, no ranking. But presence is where identity lives. Another crucial step is noticing the measuring reflex. That automatic scan you do when you enter a room. Who seems more confident? Who seems more successful? Who seems ahead? This reflex is not a flaw. It's a learned survival pattern. Patterns can be observed without being obeyed. You can notice comparison without following it. You can name it as old programming and gently return to yourself. Comparison narrows awareness. Self-awareness expands it. The body plays a role too, because comparison lives not just in thoughts, but in tension. The clenched jaw, the lifted shoulders, the shallow breath. These are signs of vigilance. Learning to relax is not laziness. It's relearning safety. This is why calm can feel unsettling to people who grew up compared. Chaos feels familiar. Calm feels suspicious. But calm is where repair happens. Healing also requires redefining success. Not as superiority, but as alignment. Success becomes doing work that feels meaningful, even if no one applauds. This redefinition goes against conditioning, and that's why it's necessary. Grief will surface here. This grief doesn't mean you're regressing, it means you're integrating. One of the most powerful shifts happens when the question changes. Not am I better than them, but am I being honest with myself? Honesty builds self-trust, and self-trust dissolves comparison. When you trust yourself, validation becomes optional. You respond instead of react. You choose based on values, not fear. Relationships change too. You allow yourself to be seen without performing. You ask for help without feeling smaller. You set boundaries without over-explaining. At first, this feels uncomfortable. Then it feels freeing. Self-compassion becomes essential here. Many people who were compared speak to themselves with an inherited cruelty. That voice was learned, not chosen. Softening it isn't indulgent. Sentence may feel radical, but it's true. Worth is not earned. It is inherent. And then something quietly powerful happens. You realize comparison didn't steal your ability. It stole your time. Time spent scanning, time spent proving, time spent doubting. Healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about reclaiming that time internally. Moving at your own pace. Letting your life unfold without constant measurement. The child who was always compared learned how to survive evaluation. The adults they become can learn how to live without it. Not perfectly, not all at once, but gradually. And one day, without noticing when it happened, the inner question changes. It becomes, am I being true to myself today? And that question doesn't compete. It doesn't rank. It doesn't threaten. It simply guides. Thank you for watching. This resonated with you. I hope you'll join us again.